And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am grateful tonight for how God is always working in our thought, preparing us for what is next. When I was a child, my family used to tell me what a great imagination I had. It may have been the only thing they uniformly praised me about, so I figured that meant it was a good thing. Because of this, I let it run wild, and for many years, all I did was be in that inner world. In my 30s, it became clear that I needed to step out of my imagination and truly live. I couldn't walk around with this filter of foolishness between me and life anymore. It took a while, but finally happened, and I realize now it is actually one of the great healings that God has brought me. It was many years before coming to Plainfield, and yet I know I would not be here now if I was still in that universe of lies. It opened the way for something much better, inspiration. For many years I thought imagination and inspiration were the same thing, but it is clear now that they are not. It's like the difference between a brick and a sunbeam. Both go through the window, but only one feels right. Another benefit of not living in my imagination is that I no longer imagine loopholes for everything. Certain things are sacred and non-negotiable. And then I found as time went on, I could imagine more ways around things that I knew were right to do. Had God not healed me of this, I know that being a part of this church would have been impossible. Christian Science is not fantastical thinking, and the only reason I ever thought that it was because fantastical thinking was all I knew. It is wonderful to know He never gives up on us, no matter how far we stray. I'm so grateful to be here tonight, to be learning about God and all of His gifts to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
That also supported my testimony this evening. When I first came here, I was taught the importance of check, and double check. In the beginning, I don't really know what it means because I never been structured that way. But as I began to understand what that word means, and our teacher here at that time, she was very, very strict with that. You have to double check. And it became a very good principle on everything we do here in the church, especially in our print room. We double check everything, and it's still the principle to this moment. Today I was working in the print room. I was making a book, a very important book of Martha Waker's book. It's a very huge book. And something wonderful happened, something I never experienced before. Towards the end of making the book, I picked up the book from the middle. I haven't binded the book together, but I just picked up from the middle. It happens the middle that I picked up, about 6 pages were missing, right in that very middle that I picked up. I matched them together. The number didn't match. I read the statement. It didn't match. I found out something definitely missing here. I took another copy and found out that 6 pages were actually missing from the book. And it was a very important lesson that God wanted me to learn in case I have forgot that principle of check, and double check. And it was wonderful how it happened today. I don't know how. But if you believe in miracles, this is probably one of them. But God was teaching us a lesson that it's important, whatever you do, I know all of us do a lot of important things. It's important to double check before you do it. And God knows how important that book is. He don't want me to send it to that person without having the complete statement in it, because He's not going to bless anyone. I'm very happy for the lesson that I'm learning here, and for God who brought me here to teach me all these lessons, to be part of this mission and be a blessing to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Sometimes when I read the Bible, I get distracted by the literal sense of the words and fail to gain the full understanding of the lesson it has to teach. That is why I'm so grateful to have Christian Science, because without it, the true meaning of the Bible gets lost to human conjecture. So grateful for the spiritual interpretation given in last week's Bible study of the 5 kings that were destroyed by Joshua and the Israelites. Translating each king into a particular state of human mind helped me to understand why God would destroy them so completely. It also inspired me to look within myself to see if I was harboring any of these thoughts. It opened my eyes to the types of suggestions I might take up a fierce battle against as well. I'm so grateful for all the work that goes into these Bible studies and lessons. Because of the love that the members of this church continue to share each week, I have learned a great deal about God. I did not have a science background and did not read the Bible until I studied Christian Science a few years ago, so every bit of insight shared has been a great blessing to me. I'm deeply grateful to God for all He has given me, and I'm grateful for Divine Science, the promised comforter. Grateful to my practitioner, who continues to work to keep my thoughts in God and to take these words of truth into my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone in the Woodstock, Hanover area? A wireless caller?
A wireless caller from the Woodstock, Hanover area. Go ahead.
Yes, this is George from Vermont. I want to express my gratitude for slowly becoming a part of this church, for my wife, who's been a Christian Scientist for many years and who's been a really good example to me. And I've recently spent some time on occasion with a practitioner talking about some ways that I want to grow and become more of a godly man and know God better. And one of the things that's helped me most in this, along with her wise counsel, has been the idea of, as this Christian Science constantly says, of really taking God at His word, that He means what He says, and if we trust Him, our lives will be different. And all my life I've been just an incredibly driven person. I don't need to go into why that is. But I've begun to see an anxious and driven, and I've begun to see some profound changes in that. And one of the sort of symbols or obvious ways that takes place has been the way I drive. That I drive fast and in a hurry. And today I was listening to some really great Christian music. I was driving most of the day, which I do for a living. I'm a builder, but I drive a lot. And I just had this amazing moment where I set the cruise control for the speed limit. I actually wanted to go the speed limit. I always have wanted to speed, and I did not even want to speed today. It doesn't mean I wasn't tempted later in the day, but it was just one of those moments where I realized God's been working in my heart to change me. And as I've talked about anxiety and being driven with a practitioner, I've realized what a form of idolatry that is, that's just a way of saying that I want to run my life my way. And the speeding has been just one of those indicators. So it was really a really precious moment today to realize that God's been changing me, and I'm grateful to the church and grateful to practitioner and grateful to my wife, above all to God for not giving up on me and helping me grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell, go ahead.
I'm grateful to be in Plainfield tonight, and it's through practitioner help that we arrived here safely and in time. Also, to hear the beautiful music that my phone doesn't do justice to when I listen at home. It was just beautiful, and I thank you. The testimony I would like to give tonight is about changing my attitude concerning the Christmas season. And there's a quote in an article in the latest December newsletter, which can be found on the website. It says, "This year, may we all attempt to transform Christmas into a most holy day rather than another holiday." And there are also writings by Mary Baker Eddy which really help me. I confess that I did not read all of them, but I will soon. And the last sentence there says, "Celebrate not so much the birth of Jesus, but celebrate the risen Christ." I am so grateful for Plainfield, practitioner help, and God and Mary Baker Eddy. I on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Linda, go ahead.
I'm very grateful tonight for what my practitioner here at Plainfield is teaching me about true prayer. This recently helped me regarding one of my sons. He is 18 and is not interested in talking about God at all. One week he was complaining about a sore ear and he was under a lot of pressure. By Thursday he was lying on the couch looking miserable and complaining about both ears being very painful. That night I found myself up in the middle of the night, which I sometimes do, and I pray. I was not praying directly for him, but I was thinking on all the faith and trust and confidence that has been built over this last year in working with the practitioner, and I knew any thought on God was better than any sense of helplessness or worry. I held him in my thought in peace. I thought about how God saw him as obedient, receptive, good, joyful. I thought on the ideas from recent watches. I prayed the 91st Psalm, the prayer of protection. I did my best to try to remember the spirit of a Colossians prayer that the practitioner had given to me. This all brought me peace. By morning, he was feeling a bit better. When I got home from work that afternoon, he was perky and fine. He had gone to the doctor that day while I was at work, and the doctor said only one of the ears was barely pink. And I just would like to express my gratitude more for the peace and the understanding that I'm getting here about how to pray for ourselves and others in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lil, go ahead.
I'm very grateful for this independent Christian Science church in helping me to learn to love. I grew up a loner and never really reached out. First for myself is to drop the past. I've been here a long time, and with practitioner help, I'm making progress to love more. Nothing is impossible, and getting out of myself is the only way that I can think of others. I'm grateful for the practitioner never giving up on helping me. I thank God for all his blessings and Mrs. Eddy for giving the world this wonderful way of life, Christian Science. Thank God that God brought me here. And thank you for those wonderful readings.
Thank you. Carol?
A few weeks ago, I began to get indigestion. I'd never had indigestion in my life, but all of a sudden it seemed to be coming on, and I thought, well, what in heaven's name is this all about? And I realized that certainly was not a productive way to think. And I remembered a practitioner in this church many years ago. Anytime there was any kind of a problem like that, the practitioner would quote one of Mrs. Eddy's hymns, "Fed by thy love divine, I live." And I thought about that and thought, if that's what feeds me is God's love, I can't react to that, and I can't have any kind of an opposition to it or any kind of reaction to it. And I just pondered on that for quite a while, and that was the end of the indigestion. It never came back. I am so very grateful to God for Christian Science, and very grateful for Mrs. Eddy for giving it to us. And Also very grateful for practitioner help. It touches every bit of our lives. And I'm awfully grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon?
I'm so grateful for Christian Science. Today in my office there was so much talk of shopping and all these busy activities, and I went in my office and I closed the door, which we're not supposed to do, but I needed to shut out mortal mind. And I was able to also call a practitioner. And it just made me so grateful for God leading me to this church, because at one time I might have got wrapped up in it. And after I opened my door and I went out into the main office, someone said, "What are you doing on Christmas Eve?" I said, "I'm going to church." And they said, "Oh, well, we're going to have a get-together and there's going to be food and drinking. Why don't you come with us?" And I said, "No, my right place is to celebrate the Christ's birth." And I said, the true meaning of Christmas. And after that, things calmed down. But I also know it was because I had mentioned to the practitioner of what was going on, and I know the situation was healed through her love. I am just so grateful for what I'm learning in this church, what I've learned, and to know this is what it's all about. The quietude, as Mrs. Eddy says. I'm just so grateful to be here, and thank you for the readings.
Thank you. Craig?
Thank you for those readings. They were all very inspiring and strengthening. The lesson this week was perfect for this holiday season, and it just lifted me up and kept me poised. I found last night I had to get up late in the middle of the night, I guess around 3 o'clock, and I just felt the need to work. And I worked and I worked. But afterwards, and I felt I'd done what I was supposed to do, and I went to bed. But in the morning, I felt like I didn't get enough sleep. And I felt uneasy. But between I got a little later, and I got up. But between the hymn sings that we have on tape and the memory of a lesson, because I didn't get a chance to read it, but I could almost by memory bring it back, I felt at peace. And I had meetings today that were important, and I needed to make the people feel like they were getting what they paid for. So I tried to be intelligent, but that's God. And God would speak through me, and He did, and it was productive. And all this goes that God is always with us, and He keeps His promises. And He didn't let me just fall because I hadn't done all that I normally would have done, which I need to get over. If I don't do everything like my plan, God's plan is still in effect, and He takes care of us. So I thank God for holding me up today and our wonderful works that we get to study.
Thank you. Gary.
This time of year is a very special and precious time of year. It's also a very challenging year for Christian Scientists, because the promise of this time of year is the risen Christ, which Mary Baker Eddy has explained is throughout all time and is for all mankind. And yet, The world seems to have perverted that to something very different. So we all feel the challenge. We all feel the opposition of the human mind to the divine idea. And I'm sure that most of us are feeling that. I'm so grateful to have found a practitioner in this church that told us the importance of starting in early November to handle the holiday mesmerism or the perversion of the right idea of the coming of the Christ. Several years of training and teaching and have instilled the discipline of not tolerating rushing around, not tolerating all the noise and hubbub. And I'm grateful to have been taught that there is only one way to celebrate Christmas, and that is, as Mrs. Eddy says, in quietude and simplicity and gratitude for the risen Christ and for what it does and means for mankind. This is a special time, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I'm so grateful for every member of this church who is a working Christian Scientist and blessing the world. And I'm looking forward to our Christmas Eve service tomorrow night.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I'd like to add my thanks too. When I was reading and studying some of the writings by Mary Baker Eddy about Christmas, she made a statement that the Christ has appeared in several times throughout the ages according to what was needed by humanity at the time. And of course, that the clearest sense of the Christ came through Jesus. But I can't help but think that I'm so thankful that God gave his final revelation of truth to Mary Baker Eddy. And here we have the appearance of the Christ, not in a personal form, but in the form of the Spirit of truth. So when I think about that time when Mary Baker Eddy was alone in the attic of that house and received this revelation and wrote it down, and at that time not even knowing what she was writing, but was just writing what came to her through revelation. And here we have it, Christian Science. I'm kind of like standing in awe of that moment. It's a sacred time because it too is an appearance of the Christ, the final revelation of the truth. So I'm humbly in awe and thankful for what's been done.
This is Day Day. Thank you. Being a part of this church is helping me to think about God more each day. And this is changing every aspect of my life. I'm finding that I no longer make as many mistakes or forget significant things as I once did when I wasted each day worrying about what I needed to do and when and how I needed to do it. I'm learning that no matter what I'm doing, I can communicate with God. And that's the very best use of my time. This change has made such a great difference for me, and I'm so grateful for a new way to think and new meaningful things to think about. Thank you so much for tonight's readings and for each testimony.
Thank you. Mary.
I'll read tonight from our website, Church Bulletin Board, the first from New York. I am very grateful for the description of the 5 kings in Saturday's Bible study. Having each king explained as states of human mind made the whole text more understandable. It inspired me to look deeper within myself. Thank you all for your great work. Virginia, many thanks for including in the Plainfield Independent newsletter for December references to Mrs. Eddy's writings on Christmas. What a blessing to spend time with these during this very special season. And Georgia, I received a wonderful surprise in the mail, the Independent Watchers Monthly. Thank you, Plainfield, for meeting this need. It's a priceless guide in assisting me when I do the watches. Thanks to all who put it together. And then Maryland, thank you all for each and everything that made for such a beautiful healing testimony service past Wednesday night. The readings, music, hymns, and testimonies, many based on the Christmas season, gave it a special sweetness. Afterwards, the harmony lingers on. And then Pennsylvania. Thank you, Joseph, for your readings of the lesson this week titled, Is the Universe, Including Man, Evolved by Atomic Force? The way you read helps me to understand the meaning of the words. Every Christmas, I usually give this testimony, but I just have to give it again. It's Mrs. Wilcox's book, Association Addresses. In that book, there's a chapter called The Power of a Right Idea, and it is a powerful chapter. She makes a point of saying that a divine idea, when correctly understood as the mighty God, or as active, powerful, conscious, good, holds within itself the power to demonstrate itself. Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health that we are to hold steadfastly to the enduring, the good, and the true, and we will bring these into our experience proportionably to the occupancy of their thought. Now, this is a rule and a principle of Christian Science. As you hold to the truth, you will manifest that truth in your life. This isn't will, but it is the power and presence of God bringing into being what He has already created. So in this chapter called The Power of a Right Idea, Martha Wilcox brings out many instances in the Bible where a right idea was brought out through the power of God. And one in particular that I love this time of year is the story of Mary. And part of this chapter is on our carousel entitled Mary, but the whole thing is from pages 288 to 295. And in it, Martha Wilcox says that sacred history tells us that in this province of Galilee and among the common people was a little group of metaphysical thinkers. Right in the midst of this dense, materialistic thinking of the upper class was this little group, this remnant of Israel, who practiced pure and undefiled religion. They taught and practiced the most beautiful moral precepts. In fact, they were full of light in that black night of materialism. Many of the best literary productions nearest the advent of Jesus were written in Galilee by these religious thinkers. This little remnant of Israel was undiscouraged for Israel's deliverance. Their faith in God was unshaken by the blood ravages of Rome. They worshiped the true God. Of all the religions of that day, none approached the Hebrew religion in purity of doctrine or cleanness of life, as shown forth by this little group of metaphysicians. This little group knew from actual experience that spiritual law set in motion by purified and spiritualized thought was far more effective than the forcing of political issues through material aggression or human will. Now, that small group of workers, and Mary in particular, brought forth the Christ, the Messiah, their dedication, their purity of thought. It is just such a tremendous story, so encouraging to us today now to know that as we keep this work up, it doesn't matter how many there are of us, but it does matter our dedication. Great things can come to pass. This is the power of a right idea. I'm very grateful to have this holy service tonight, for the readings, the beautiful music. It's just such a beautiful prelude. To hear the testimonies, to know that we're all working together in unity for the good of all mankind. And we will see you all again tomorrow night at our Christmas Eve service.